Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Logan's Voice. I'm Doug Ballinger, Logan's dad, and this podcast is a space for truth, healing, and awareness in the face of the biggest public health crisis of our time, the fentanyl epidemic, and the broader issue of substance use disorder. If you're new here, I started Logan's Voice in honor of my son Logan, who died from fentanyl poisoning in 2020. He was 32 years old. He was smart, funny, kind, and deeply loved. But like millions of others, he struggled with addiction in a world that too often fails to understand, support, or protect people living with this disease. Today's episode is an educational one. We're going to talk about Narcan, what it is, how it works, how to use it, where to get it, and why it should be as common as carrying an EpiPen or knowing CPR. We'll also talk about some of the myths and stigma surrounding Narcan and the importance of harm reduction. Later in this episode, I'll share a little about Logan's experience with Narcan. He was revived with it several times in 2019, and while it gave us more time with him, it also showed me just how urgent it is for people to understand the role Narcan plays and doesn't play in saving lives. Let's get into it. What is Narcan? Let's start at the beginning, because not everyone knows what Narcan is, and that's okay. That's why we're here. Narcan is the brand name for a medication called naloxone. It's what's called an opioid antagonist, which means it goes into the brain and blocks the effects of opioids. Think of it like this. If opioids are putting the brakes on your breathing, Narcan is the emergency override. It kicks those opioids off the receptors in the brain and helps get the person breathing again. And here's the thing, it works fast. In most cases, Narcan starts working within 2 to 3 minutes. That quick response is what makes it so life-saving. When someone is overdosing, every second matters. Now, when we talk about opioids, we're not just talking about heroin. This includes prescription painkillers like oxycodone, hydrocodone, morphine, and others. And most dangerously, it includes fentanyl, the synthetic opioid that's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. Fentanyl poisoning is what's driving the overwhelming majority of deaths today due to this crisis, especially because it's often mixed into other drugs like cocaine, meth, or pressed into fake pills that look like Percocet, Xanax, or Adderall. So even someone who thinks they're taking something safe could unknowingly be exposed to deadly doses of fentanyl. That's a poisoning. That's why we say everyone should carry Narcan. You never know whose life you might save. Now, there are two main types of Narcan you might come across. First is the nasal spray. This is the most common and easiest to use. It comes in a little plunger type device that fits perfectly in your hand. You insert it into one nostril and press. You don't need to assemble anything, and you don't need to be a medical professional to use it. It's designed for everyday people like you and me. And even friends, family members, strangers, they can use it in an emergency. And number two is injectable naloxone. This is usually a vial and syringe and is more common in hospitals or EMS settings. Some community programs may still distribute it, but for the average person, the nasal spray is the go-to option. And here's a common question that gets asked all the time. Can Narcan hurt someone if they're not actually overdosing? The answer is no. If you give Narcan to someone who isn't experiencing an opioid overdose, it won't harm them. It's not like giving somebody the wrong medication. It has just one job: to reverse opioids. And if there are no opioids in their system, it basically does nothing. It might give them a little headache. So if you're ever in doubt, give the Narcan. It's also important to understand that while Narcan is incredibly effective, it doesn't last long. The effects of Narcan wear off in 30 to 90 minutes, depending on the person. And that's a short window. And with powerful opioids like fentanyl, the risk is that as soon as the Narcan wears off, the overdose could start again, especially if the individual's body has not metabolized the opioid out of their system. Multiple doses may be required. That's why calling 911 is always the first and most important step. Narcan gives you a chance to keep the person alive until emergency help arrives, but it's not a replacement for professional medical care. Narcan is not a treatment. It's not a cure. It's a tool, and a very powerful one, that buys time. And when it comes to an overdose, time is everything. Knowing how to recognize an opioid overdose can be the difference between life and death. Overdoses don't always look dramatic. A lot of people imagine someone convulsing or foaming at the mouth, but the reality is usually much quieter and much easier to miss if you don't know what to look for. So let's go over the key signs. Here's some of the most common symptoms of an opioid overdose. Slowed or stopped breathing. This is the big one. Opioids depress the respiratory system. You might hear very shallow breaths or none at all. The person might sound like they're snoring or gurgling. That's not normal sleep. It's a sign they can't breathe properly. And there may be blue or gray lips and fingertips. When oxygen levels drop in our bodies, the skin around the lips, nose, and nails may turn blue or grayish. This is a major red flag. And then their pupils. They may have pinpoint pupils. If their pupils look unusually small, almost like tiny little dots, that's a sign of opioid use or overdose. Their body may be limp. They may be slumped over, difficult to wake up, or completely unresponsive. They may have cold or clammy skin. The skin may feel cool, damp, or even sweaty. And they may have no response to touch or voice. If you shake their shoulders, call out their name, or even rub your knuckles hard against their breastbone and they don't respond, that's a medical emergency. So, what do you do if you see somebody showing these signs? Let's break it down step by step. First, check for responsiveness. Shake them gently but firmly, call out their name, and try a sternum rub, which is when you press your knuckles into the center of their chest and rub hard. If they don't react, assume it's an overdose. And then secondly, call 911 immediately. This step is critical. If you don't have a phone, call out to someone else that may be nearby to call emergency services. Tell them you suspect an overdose. In many states, there are Good Samaritan laws that protect you and the person who's overdosing from prosecution for drug possession if you call for help. Your job is to save a life, not worry about getting in trouble. And after you've called for emergency services, administer Narcan. If you have it, give 1 dose of Narcan or naloxone into one nostril. Lay the person on their back, tilt their head slightly, insert the nozzle, and press the plunger. Wait and watch is the fourth step. Stay with them. It usually takes about 2 to 3 minutes to work. And if they don't respond, or if they start breathing again but then stop, give the second dose in the other nostril. And number 5, you may have to perform rescue breathing if needed. If you know how and they aren't breathing, start rescue breaths. Tilt the head back, lift the chin, pinch the nose, and breathe into their mouth once every 5 seconds until help arrives, or until they start breathing on their own. And number 6, keep them safe. If they wake up, they may be confused, scared, or even upset. Sometimes there's violence. Reassure them. Let them know they're okay and help is on the way. They may not even know that they overdosed. And here's something important to remember. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to act. Too often people freeze, afraid to do the wrong thing. But doing something is always better than doing nothing. If you call 911 and give Narcan, you're giving that person a real shot at surviving. You might think you'll never be in a situation where this knowledge matters, but let me tell you, overdoses can happen anywhere. At school, at a gas station, in a public bathroom, even in your own home. And with the rise of fentanyl showing up in all kinds of counterfeit pills, this risk isn't limited to people with long-term addiction. It could be someone experimenting for the very first time. A college student, a coworker, a friend's kid, someone you love. I know this because I lived it. I've been that parent getting that phone call, rushing to the hospital, praying Narcan worked. Again. Later in this episode, I'll show you how Narcan brought Logan back more than once. But for now, just know this. You don't have to be a doctor to save a life. You just have to be prepared. It's my opinion that this life-saving technique should be taught alongside rescue breathing, CPR, and the use of an EpiPen. Those things are so common in our society that we even teach it in high schools. Let's start including Narcan use in this narrative. So let's talk about where we can get Narcan. We've talked about what Narcan is and how to recognize when it's needed. Now, how do you get some? Because here's the truth. It doesn't help anyone if Narcan is locked away behind a counter or carried only by EMTs. We need it in homes, in purses, in glove compartments, in classrooms, college dorms, and break rooms everywhere. The good news, in most places across the United States, Narcan is now widely available without a prescription. That's huge. That means you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a medical professional, and you don't even have to explain yourself. You can walk into most major pharmacy places like Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Walmart, and say, I'd like to get Narcan. And they'll either hand it to you or tell you where to find it on the shelves. Some stores even stock it over the counter now, just like Tylenol. There might be a small out of pocket cost, usually somewhere between $20 and $50, but in many states, insurance will cover it fully. Now, if cost is a concern, or you'd rather not go to a pharmacy, there are also a lot of incredibly community based programs and nonprofits that distribute Narcan for free. Let me share one I know personally. Hope Movement Coalition is an incredible organization that's making a difference in my home state of Arkansas. They work with the Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership, also known as AORP, through a program called HERO, which stands for Harm Reduction, Education, Recovery, and Outreach. The HERO program helps distribute Narcan to individuals, families, schools, and organizations all across our state. It's about putting life-saving tools in the hands of real people, not just professionals. If you live in Arkansas, you can connect with Hope Movement Coalition or AORP and request Narcan. They also offer trainings, either in person or online, on how to use it properly. If you're listening from outside of Arkansas, check with your local health department, needle exchange program, or harm reduction coalition. Many areas have mobile outreach teams or community events where Narcan is distributed. No questions asked. And another national resource I highly recommend is the Partnership to End Addiction. This organization offers education, family support, and tools to help people understand addiction, reduce stigma, and protect their loved ones. Their website is full of guidance on how to talk to your family, where to find treatment, and yes, how and where to access Narcan. They're doing this kind of work we need more of. Work that's rooted in compassion, science, and family-centered support. One other way you can get Narcan is by mail through select harm reduction programs. Do a search for free Narcan by mail and your state name. Some nonprofits slip it discreetly into your home along with easy instructions. And remember, if you're in school or part of a community group, you may be able to request a bulk supply to have on hand at events or meetings. Here's what I want to say loud and clear. You do not have to justify carrying Narcan. Let me say that again. You do not have to justify carrying Narcan. You don't need to explain yourself and why you want it. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Wanting to be prepared in case of emergency is reason enough. You don't wait until a fire breaks out to go buy a fire extinguisher. And we don't wait until someone's choking to learn the Heimlich. We don't wait until someone has a heart attack to learn CPR. Narcan is the same. It's just another tool we can carry to help protect each other. I carry it. I encourage every parent, teacher, friend, and neighbor to carry it, because if the moment ever comes, if you're standing there watching someone fade in front of you, you'll want to be the one who can act. And if no one's told you yet, you're allowed to be that person. Now, what happens when someone is revived? All right, so let's talk about what happens after Narcan is administered. What to expect if you're the one administering it, and what the person might experience when they come to. Because here's the thing, most people don't realize Waking up from an overdose is not like waking up from a nap. It's not peaceful. It's not always a relief. It can be disorienting, scary, and even traumatic for everyone involved. When Narcan kicks in, it essentially strips all of the opioids out of the brain's receptors. That means someone who was moments away from not breathing is suddenly awake again, but they're now going through immediate opioid withdrawal, which can be physically and emotionally intense. Here are some of the reactions you might observe from someone you've just administered Narcan to. There will probably be confusion and disorientation. They may not know where they are or what just happened, and they may not even know that they just overdosed. There's probably going to be agitation and anger. This one can be surprising, but it's actually really common. The person may be upset that you ruined their high, or they may feel physically terrible and lash out. This isn't personal, it's a physiological reaction. There might be nausea or vomiting. Sudden withdrawal can cause intense nausea. Be prepared to roll the person on their side so they don't choke. There could be sweating, shaking, or chills. Those are all classic withdrawal symptoms. And then there might be crying, panic, or fear. Sometimes they're scared, overwhelmed, embarrassed, or just in shock that they were that close to dying. It's very important that when you observe these reactions, that you stay calm. Let them know you're there, let them know they're safe, and let them know that help is coming. You don't need to lecture them in that moment. Just be present and kind. You might say something like this: "Hey, bud, you just overdosed. I gave you Narcan and called 911. You're okay now, but you need to get checked out by medical professionals." And here's something crucial. Just because someone wakes up doesn't mean they're out of the woods. Narcan wears off in 30 to 90 minutes, and depending on what and how much they took, the overdose can return, especially with fentanyl. It sticks around in the system much longer than Narcan can fight it off. That's why you always need to call 911, even if the person is walking and talking. Now, I know some people are afraid to call for help. Maybe they worry about getting into legal trouble, or they don't want the person to get arrested. You're not protecting that person. In most states, Good Samaritan laws protect you and the person who overdosed from being prosecuted for drug possession if you call 911 in good faith. I also want to be real about how it feels on an emotional level. If you've never seen someone revived with Narcan before, it can be shocking. There's adrenaline, fear, hope, sometimes relief, sometimes heartbreak. You might cry, you might freeze up, you might feel guilty or angry. All of that is normal. And for the person being revived, the emotions can be just as overwhelming, especially if this wasn't their first time. That was the case with Logan. In the months preceding his death, he disclosed to me that he had been administered Narcan on several occasions. He described how it made him feel when he woke up, that he was angry, but each and every time he did go to the emergency room and get checked out until the fentanyl metabolized out of his system. Each time it brought him back, but it didn't mean he was okay. It meant we had another chance, and that chance had to be followed up with support, love, and a plan. That's one thing I want people to understand in this episode. Narcan is not the finish line. It's the beginning of a second chance. If you've used Narcan on someone you love, know this. You didn't fail them. You didn't ruin their high. You saved their life. What comes next is hard, yes, but they're still here. And while there's breath in their lungs, there's hope. Let's talk a little bit about what that hope can look like through harm reduction and support systems that work. Now that we've talked about Narcan and what happens when someone is revived, we need to talk about the bigger picture, because Narcan is just one part of a larger philosophy that often gets misunderstood. That philosophy is called harm reduction. Let's start with this. Harm reduction is not enabling. It's not giving up. It's not saying this is fine. Harm reduction is saying you matter, your life has value, and I'm not giving up on you, even if you're not ready to stop using yet. Too often we treat addiction like it's a moral failing or a bad choice, but substance use disorder is a disease, and like any disease, people experience in different ways at different stages. Harm reduction acknowledges that not everyone is ready or able to quit right now. But that doesn't mean they should be left to die. So, what does harm reduction actually look like? It can include things like Narcan distribution, so people don't die from an overdose of opioids or being poisoned by fentanyl. There are fentanyl test strips available so that users can check if what they're taking is contaminated. And these are cheap, easy to use, and have saved countless lives. With that being said, I want to make sure that you understand clearly that when someone in active addiction is testing their product to see if it contains fentanyl, they may scrape off a little bit of a pill that contains no fentanyl at all. And once they realize that they could take the drug safely, then what might be left in the other side of the pill is enough fentanyl to kill 5 or 6 people. Although test strips are effective, they do not catch every bit of fentanyl in the drugs. There are also syringe service programs, which help reduce the spread of HIV, hepatitis C, and other diseases that come from sharing needles. They also often serve as the first point of contact for someone who eventually does want help. Let's say that again. Oftentimes, syringe exchange programs are the first point of contact for someone who eventually does want help. If someone in active addiction is seeking out a cleaner way to do drugs, something is tickling the back of their brain and they know they need help. They just don't know how to get it. Opioid use, especially prolonged opioid use, takes over the brain. It physiologically changes the way we think. It interrupts the frontal lobe where the executive decisions are made. It's no longer the user making the decisions, it's the drug. It's the addiction. And another controversial topic is safe use education. Teach people not to use alone, to test their drugs, and how to recognize the signs of overdose. And one of the most amazing parts is peer outreach teams, where people with lived experiences that have worked so hard to maintain their sobriety, Go into communities and build trust with those who are struggling. They know firsthand what's going on, and they know how to talk the talk and walk the walk. Oftentimes, these people are more successful at getting people help and getting them to understand that there is life after active addiction. Now, some people hear this and think, aren't you just making it easier for people to use? But I want to flip that question around. Isn't it better to make it easier for people to stay alive? Here's what the research and real world experience tells us. Harm reduction doesn't increase drug use. It increases survival. And when people feel safe, seen, and supported, they're more likely to seek treatment. They're more likely to trust someone who offers help. Harm reduction builds the bridge between where someone is now and where they might one day be. The Partnership to End Addiction is one of many organizations that understand this. They provide real resources for families navigating this journey. Not just how to get your loved ones into rehab, but how to communicate, how to understand the science of addiction, and how to practice compassion without enabling chaos. They're working hard to make sure families don't feel so alone in this. And the same is true for organizations like Hope Movement Coalition and programs like the HERO program in Arkansas. These groups aren't just handing out Narcan, they're offering dignity, safety, and hope without judgment. They're showing up for people society has written off and reminding them your life matters, you still matter, and we haven't given up on you. I know how hard this road is. As a parent, I wanted to fix everything for Logan. I wanted to take away the pain. I wanted him to stop using. And I also wanted to believe that he would. But there were times when that wasn't our reality. And during those times, I am thankful that harm reduction was how we kept him alive long enough to try one more time. And you don't have to choose between saving someone's life and hoping they recover. You can do both. You can meet someone where they are without leaving them there. So if you're listening right now and wondering what you can do, start here. Carry Narcan. Learn about test strips, support harm reduction organizations, and talk about this stuff in your community, at your church, at your kids' school. The more we normalize it, the more lives we can save. Because harm reduction isn't about giving up, it's about holding on. And let's talk about why it matters, especially how it relates to Logan's story. Everything we've talked about today, Narcan, overdose response, harm reduction, it's not just theory for me. This isn't just research or advocacy. It's my real life. It's my son's life. Logan. Logan was kind, smart, curious. He had this spark about him. The kind of kid who could walk into a room and light it up with his energy, or with that mischievous little grin he'd flash when he was up to something. He was deeply loved, not just by me, but by so many. And he had dreams, passions, and people who believed in him. But he also struggled. Like so many others, Logan was introduced to the just take a pill mindset early on. He was diagnosed with ADHD and prescribed medication as a child, a decision we made, trusting the guys in the white coats, doing the best we could at the time. I often look back and wonder if that was where it started. The idea that a pill could fix things. But we don't get do-overs as parents. We only get the truth we have at the time. By his teens, Logan was experimenting, and like many families, we always didn't understand the full extent. He learned how to tell each of us, me, his mom, other family members, different stories to keep us just far enough apart to stay in the dark. He found himself in the grips of addiction before any of us really understood what was happening. And by 2019, Logan had overdosed multiple times. Once on his birthday in 2019. He was administered Narcan several times that year. Each time it worked. Each time it pulled him back from the edge. And each time it gave us more time. More time to talk. More time to try again. And more time to hope. I remember the feeling, that mix of terror and gratitude, watching someone you love go from lifeless to breathing again is a kind of miracle you never forget. But it also leaves you shaken. It reminds you that this disease doesn't play fair, that fentanyl doesn't give warnings, and that people we love can be gone in just seconds. I am grateful that Narcan gave Logan and me more time together. But it wasn't enough. In May of 2020, he was gone. Fentanyl poisoning. Just one fatal dose. One moment. That's all it took. And that's why I do this. That's why Logan's voice exists. Because I can't save Logan now, but maybe, just maybe, I can help save someone else. Maybe I can help another parent understand why they need to carry Narcan, or why it's worth having the difficult conversation with their child, or why judgment has no place in our society, especially when we're trying to keep people alive. We must do everything we can to end the stigma around substance use disorder, especially for those that are in active addiction. Love them openly. Put your arms around them. Stand next to them. You don't have to have all the answers. Just be present. Remind them that they are loved and they are valued, and their lives always matter. Unfortunately, Logan's story isn't unique. That's what breaks my heart. And it's also what drives me. Because every statistic you hear, every overdose, every life lost had a face, a name, a favorite song, or a laugh that someone can still hear in their head. Harm reduction didn't fail Logan. Narcan didn't fail Logan. The system failed him. The stigma, the lack of access to real care, and the silence we too often keep around addiction and substance use disorder. So today, if you take anything with you from this episode, please let it be this. Carry Narcan and learn how to use it. Talk about it, normalize it, push through the discomfort. I promise on the other side you will feel much better. If someone you love is struggling, don't give up on them, but also don't wait. And please remember, you don't have to be a doctor or a medical professional to save a life. You just have to be there and care enough to be prepared. Logan didn't get his second chance. Not the one that led to long-term recovery. But Narcan gave him more chances than we would have had otherwise. And it gave me more moments to hold on to. For that, I'm grateful, and I'll never stop fighting for others to have the same. Thank you for listening today. Thank you truly. Especially that you've been sitting here listening to a broken-hearted dad who has experienced the awful truth of losing a child to this epidemic. This episode, like every one of them, comes from a place of love, heartbreak, and a deep desire to do something, to make even a small dent in the silence and stigma that surround addiction and overdose in this country. I'm figuring out how to turn the pain of losing my child into purpose to help other people. If you made it to the end of this episode, it means you care. Maybe you're someone who's lost a loved one like I have. Maybe you're in recovery. Maybe you're supporting someone who's still struggling. Or maybe you're just waking up to the realities of this crisis and looking for answers. Whatever brought you here, I'm grateful, because awareness is how the change begins. Let's do what we can to change the narrative. But awareness alone isn't enough. That's why I want to encourage you to take one small action today. Just one. Go pick up some Narcan and learn how to use it. Keep it in your car, your purse, or your desk drawer at work. Talk to your kids, your friends, your coworkers, even though you know it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe it's a parent who's scared. Maybe it's someone who doesn't understand what Narcan really is. Let this conversation be the one that opens a door. And if you're grieving, if you've lost someone to this, like I have, I want you to know there is space for your pain here. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to explain it. You are not alone, even if it feels like you are. I see you, and I walk that same road every day. I do this in Logan's name because he can't tell his story anymore, but I can. I am his voice now. And my hope is that by speaking out, someone else's child, someone else's sibling, someone else's friend will live to tell their own story in their own voice. I say this every time and I mean it. We don't save lives alone. We do it together. So let's keep going with open hearts, open minds, and the courage to speak the hard truth, not just for the people we've lost, but for the people we can still reach. There's so much information online, especially about Narcan resources and harm reduction programs. The websites that I trust are Hope Movement Coalition, CWC Alliance, Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership's HERO program, and the Partnership to End Addiction. And if you ever want to share your story, or if you just need someone to listen, my inbox is open. You can reach me on Facebook through Rex Logan's dad and drop me a DM. You're part of this community now, and this community is built on love, not judgment. There is no stigma here. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. And always remember, one life saved is everything. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not be silent any longer.